Jack had owned the ranch for years, and the old barn was one of his most valuable structures. But the local HOA suddenly decided the barn had to disappear. Linda arrived with an official-looking folder and a very confident attitude. She told Jack the HOA had decided his barn violated the neighborhood's standards. The notice demanded that Jack remove the barn. Jack calmly asked Linda to show him the exact rule that gave the HOA that authority. Jack refused to panic and started reviewing every document connected to his property. What he found made him realize the HOA's demand was far more complicated than it looked. The property records showed that the barn stood entirely on Jack's private land. There was no simple HOA rule allowing them to order its destruction. Linda brought the issue before the HOA board, expecting everyone to support her. Instead, several homeowners began questioning why the board was targeting a private property. Linda insisted the barn was an eyesore and claimed the HOA had every right to remove it. Jack simply asked her to prove it with an actual legal document. Then Linda took things to another level and arrived with a demolition crew. She told Jack the barn would be removed whether he agreed or not. Jack immediately contacted the proper authorities and legal professionals. He wasn't going to start a confrontation. He was going to protect his property through the proper process. Officials arrived and the demolition work was stopped while the property situation was reviewed. For the first time, Linda realized this wasn't going to end the way she expected. The officials began reviewing the property boundaries and the documents behind the HOA's demand. The more they investigated, the weaker Linda's position became. The property survey confirmed what Jack had already discovered. The barn was located on his private property and was not simply an HOA-controlled structure. The HOA board suddenly realized that Linda's decision could create serious consequences. Their meeting became less about removing the barn and more about figuring out how to defend the decision. Jack hired an attorney to handle the dispute properly. He wanted the facts documented and the situation resolved through the legal system. A formal legal notice was sent to the HOA demanding that all unauthorized action stop. Linda was finally forced to respond through official channels. Linda expected Jack to back down. Instead, she was now facing a formal legal dispute over the actions she had ordered. Jack's attorney organized the evidence piece by piece. The goal was simple: let the documents tell the story. Linda and the HOA prepared their defense, insisting the board had acted within its authority. But their argument would soon be tested in court. The day finally came when both sides had to present their evidence before a judge. Jack walked into court calm, knowing he had documented everything. The property records, survey, and photographs were presented one after another. The evidence showed exactly where the barn stood and who owned the land beneath it. Linda's confident smile slowly disappeared. The courtroom evidence was becoming very different from the story she had originally told the HOA. The judge carefully reviewed the documents and questioned both sides about the HOA's authority. The courtroom became completely silent as everyone waited for the decision. The judge ruled that the unauthorized destruction of Jack's property could not simply be ignored. The consequences for the responsible parties were now going to be enormous. The court ordered substantial financial responsibility for restoring what had been wrongfully destroyed. The final figure reached nearly $6 million, leaving Linda speechless. Linda had arrived expecting Jack to lose his barn and walk away quietly. Instead, her actions had created a massive financial responsibility for the HOA and those involved. The legal battle was over, but Jack still had a long road ahead. For him, rebuilding wasn't just about a structure. It was about restoring something that belonged to his family. The rebuilding process finally began with professional contractors and carefully prepared plans. Jack watched the first new beams go into place. Months later, the new barn stood stronger and better than before. Jack finally had the satisfaction of seeing his property restored. Jack never wanted a fight with the HOA. He simply wanted his property rights respected, and in the end, the court made sure they were. What would you have done if your HOA tried to destroy something on your property? Like, subscribe, and tell me where you're watching from.